Good morning and welcome to Brief Insights. So last week we talked about ADR, specifically arbitration. Today I'm going to talk about something related to that, but it applies to you as an individual. So stay tuned. So our discussion last week, we covered arbitration and that it can be non-binding or binding. Today we're going to focus on binding arbitration. Now, last week I told you that binding arbitration is a waiver of your trial by jury, your right to file a lawsuit, and your right to appeal. So if you are subject to an binding arbitration clause, you have waived all of that. Now, there are two ways you can become subject to a binding arbitration. The first is that you sign a contract that has that clause already in there. And in that case, the only way to get out of it is to have the other party agree to amend the contract and take it out. The second way you can become subject to binding arbitration is if a company that you do business with or an organization that you already have a contract with changes their terms and conditions to include an arbitration agreement. Now, in that case, you're going to be, or you should receive, hopefully, you'll be notified of your right to opt out of that arbitration clause. Today, we're going to talk about the opt out and why it is so important to you as an individual. I'd like to preface by saying I understand why large companies try to get everyone to agree to an arbitration. I understand. If, let's say, for example, Citibank had every single person that was upset with them file a lawsuit, there's no way that they could keep up with the cost or the maintenance of those lawsuits. It would just be impossible. It would probably put them out of business. So I understand from a business perspective why the arbitration clauses are being pushed out. I do get it. But as an individual, and as someone doing this video for you as individuals, I have to say you must always opt out if given that option, when given that option. So, for example, last summer, I received a letter from my credit card company that said, we're changing our terms and conditions, and we're now including binding arbitration. And if you want to opt out, you have to send us a letter. So you send in a letter. I also had an employer who rolled out binding arbitration to all of their employees. But prior to that, all of the employees were given a form. So we're going to be rolling out arbitration. If you want to opt out, sign this form and turn it into HR. You may have seen something like that before, and you may not have understood exactly what it was. That is your way to get out of binding arbitration. If you're ever presented with one, do it. Take advantage. The reason being is that mediation and arbitration are always an option. You can get upset with me and call me and say, hey, I have a claim that I'd like to file against you, but first let's mediate. We can do that. Or first let's arbitrate. We can do that. You can use those options before you ever even file a lawsuit. Or after you've filed a lawsuit, those are always options. You can say, okay, I filed a lawsuit or I filed a claim, but now let's take it to arbitration. As a matter of fact, many courts require you to go to mediation or arbitration before they'll even hear your case. You always have that option. It is always available to you, whether you have an arbitration agreement or you don't. But if you signed a binding arbitration agreement, that then becomes your only option. So it's not that opting out or signing that form takes away your right to mediate. And sometimes that's how it will be presented. The company will present it to you and say, this is how we both come out ahead. Legal fees are expensive. And if you sign this, we'll both have to arbitrate and we can save some fees. And that's true. If your binding arbitration is much less expensive than a lawsuit. But there's no reason why you should limit your legal avenues that way. And there's no company probably that I can think of that should you have a claim against them and you want to arbitrate that they're going to tell you no. That's the opt-out. If you need additional assistance or have more questions about it, please ask me. I know that's something that a lot of individuals just don't understand what it is, so they don't sign it or they don't go through with it. And it really protects your rights as an individual. I'm so glad you tuned in today. As always, contact me if you have any questions and have a great day. See you later.